Were we really just seconds away from Armageddon, do you think?
Well, I'm not sure about Armageddon, but it was certainly just a fraction of a millimeter probably away from Donald Trump losing his life. And who knows what could have happened at the end of that. It would have been just incredible chaos. But it just appears to be just blind luck that has kept him alive so far, because what we've seen from the performance of the entire law enforcement system, not just the Secret Service, but the local officials as well, was just disastrously inadequate. Didn't even take some of the normal procedures and precautions that would be ordinary from someone who didn't even know very much what they were doing, much less from someone who's supposed to be an absolute expert at it. There's a lot of questions for the agency to answer.
Well, can you pose some of those questions now? You're a man who's much more in the know than I am when it comes to the security operation. So, what are the key questions for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, needs to be answered is how is it even possible that the building from which the shooter took his shots was not specifically manned and protected? Because when you look at that whole area there, especially from some of those drone shots you may have seen, you see it's wide open territory. There's not even a lot of trees in the way. The land is flat. So the real threat to the president would have to be from some elevated position with a line of sight to the platform. And there was only a handful of buildings in the entire area that met that criteria. That was the closest one. It was barely 147 meters, I think it was the actual distance to the platform, which is really close. For that to have not been protected and defended is just really hard to understand. That's number one, probably the first one. But the second one is right behind it. There were so many sightings of this guy when he's moving from building to building to get to the one from which he shot. There were policemen that were aware. There was many people on the ground who were shouting that there's a gunman there. One in particular, which I think was interviewed by the BBC, said he was physically pointing up at the counter sniper teams, waving his arms, pointing to the roof. He claims that they saw him, and yet no one took any action, either to take out the gunman or to remove President Trump from the platform. That should have been the first thing to do. If you suspect that there's a gunman, he should have immediately been taken off the platform. None of those things were done. And there's a lot of questions as to why that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has fueled a lot of people saying, well, did someone want this to happen? I don't know if that's a route that you're thinking of.
Well, look, right now there's not enough information, but unfortunately, the facts leave that gate open, because one has to answer, how could so many self-evidently obvious things that should have taken place, other things that should never have been allowed, continue to be allowed? And especially, I think one of the biggest concerns is that so much time elapsed from the time that many, many people on the ground saw the shooter. Policemen, even some of the videos you've seen, 2 minutes before, you see a policeman walking on the ground being told where they are, and yet no one took any action. There was one policeman that is reported just seconds before the shots rang out, went up on the building, saw him, and apparently the shooter moved his weapon in the direction of the policeman, and he dropped down to the ground. Now, that by itself is another issue, because if you're a policeman there to secure the president of the United States, you're told there's a gunman, you crawl up on the ledge, you see the gunman, the first thing you should have done is taken your sidearm while you're holding on with the other hand and at least engage the guy, or separately just fired bullets to warn other people. And again, none of those things were done.